Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everybody. I'm your host, Preacher Moss, host of the SOS Shout Out Show. I hope everybody's having a great day, a great Sunday, because I always feel like a really good Sunday makes you handle Monday just a little bit better. You know what I mean? Just it's the transition. Sometimes I feel like we underestimate how important Sunday is to the rest of our week, but that's probably another show at some point in time. I want to welcome you if you come to the show for the first time. I appreciate you. Simple rules when you come to the show for the first time. That is, enjoy yourself. This is a platform that is not my platform. I'm the host, but this is your house. And we're opening the house and inviting you in and say, move around, meet people, things like that. You're part of a very eclectic group. See, I threw that in there, which means that you are a part of a group that's already out here doing amazing things, number one. Number two, amazing opinions. We have an eclectic group of people that come to the Shout Out Show, share their opinions, and we would hope that as you come to the show to share your opinion, you become one of the family. Last thing is, hey man, don't be shy. Get yourself in the comment section. Get yourself a shout out so you're an official member of the Shout Out Show. You hear what I'm saying? Get your shout out. Now, if you're new to the show, this is what I do at every show. It's appreciation. It's gratitude. The people that I'm about to bring on the show, they've probably been on at least 100 shows, at least 150 shows. And that's consistency. Has nothing to do with me, has to do with them. And if you come to the show, I want you to have that kind of consistency too. Come on. Hit the subscribe button, hit the notification button, be a part of something, be a part of the family, okay? So let me show you how this thing goes before I get into our subject matter. We have Sister Ree, who's back from Michigan. She's done some Florence Nightingale stuff, going to take care of her sister and also going to take care of her auntie. You know, people don't understand that type of work. And Ree, I want you to hold on to that thought because I'm going to talk about it because it ties into our subject today, our topic, if you don't mind. And this is my main man, 50 grand, Johnny L. Thomas from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. JT, I call him JT. Nobody else call him JT. I'm his big brother. But he's been tuning into the show for a long time, giving me support, giving me guidance, giving me all kinds of opinions, giving me all kinds of advice, and I appreciate him. Thank you for coming on the show. My main man, Altaf Rashid, all the way from Toronto. What is the show without the international flavor? You know what I mean? This brother comes to the show. He needs no passport. He needs no plane ticket. He needs no security. He needs no immigration. He just comes to the show, and that's the beauty of technology. Altaf, my sir, I salute you. Hey, the Maple Leafs had a tough loss yesterday, man. Hopefully they'll pick it up. But thank you for coming on the show, everybody. And here's Ree always throwing out some work. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And we also have Sister Aika all the way from Indonesia, brothers and sisters. Let me get this right. Jakarta, Indonesia. Actually, Dapak, which is next to Jakarta, which is in Indonesia. Thank you so much for coming on the show, sister. Always tuning in, giving us good vibes, giving us good rhythms. Want to shout out. Also, I want to shout out Miss Eleanor. I think I told you her birthday was a couple days ago, but we want to shout her out. I also want to shout out my mom, because they had a great birthday celebration in the midst of all this COVID. You know how our folks are. Our mother's going to do what they want to do, but they got together and had a great time. And those are two people who do so much for one another and care about one another. I mean, that's what life is about. So I appreciate it. Somebody put up the sad face. What is that? We've never had a sad face, but you got to turn that around. All right. Also coming to the set, my sister, my buddy in arms. I want to give a shout out to Sister Sultana Whitfield, who is the consultant producer of the show. I say this every day, but I need everybody to know she's a consultant producer of the show and lending a lot of creativity, a lot of energy, a lot of effort to this thing actually coming off. You know what I'm saying? So for that, I'm thankful. I'm going to give you guys a quick apology. Right now, the sun is really bright where I am, so the little green screen might be messed up. How'd you guys like the green screen? Instead of looking at the background, I put some jazz up there for you. I hope you guys like it. I'm going to be putting up some more green screen stuff as possible as things move along. But I'm happy to have you guys here today. So my topic today, brothers and sisters, it's something I've been kind of advocating around. I don't want to say beating around the bush, But sometimes when you address topics, what is interesting is you really have to look at the scope of your topic. Sometimes you have to. It's like a maxim. It's not where it starts, but what it leads to. And the whole thing of frontline workers is something I've really been focusing on for probably the last year. I come from a family where we've had several nurses who are frontline workers, um, teachers who are frontline workers. I myself have taught for quite a number of years. And this whole thing with COVID is interesting because while we're in the middle of a pandemic, granted, but what's interesting about being in the middle of a pandemic is the pandemic doesn't necessarily change. It's the behavior around the pandemic that's changing. It is the attitude around the pandemic that's changing. And thus, the topic is not saluting our frontline workers. We did that before. Last year, we did that. Now it's come to the aspect that we now have to protect our frontline workers. Why do you say protect? You know, brothers and sisters, it's not put out there with all the things going on with the Capitol revolts and elections being stolen, but we've gotten to a point of negative hubris whereby our own frontline workers are being are being threatened, if you will. They're not being protected. And I don't mean in ways just like, if I was, put it like this, if they wanted to be a frontline worker, you're going to probably have to pay me $300 an hour, plus benefits. And I'm only going to work on weekends. You see what I'm saying? Because, brothers and sisters, it's dangerous. Does that make sense? It's dangerous. And, we got another. Sister Latifah Turner. How you doing, sister? Wa alaikum assalam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for dropping in, Sister Latifah. I hope the topic makes sense to you and you get something out of it. But from all of us on the Shout Out Show family, we salute you and we thank you for coming. Thank you for dropping by. And peace and blessings to your family. But this whole idea, brothers and sisters, of frontline workers it's a bit of an anathema, man. When you start thinking about the history of frontline workers, particularly from the African American community, the history of frontline workers have been the people who they did all the things to maintain other people's lifestyle. Let's just start there. They are people who did things to maintain other people's lifestyle. And it's no different now with COVID. You have a group of people who do nothing but help maintain other people's lifestyle. Yes, we're talking about doctors, we're talking about skilled workers, doctors, nurses, and things like that. But in the hospitals, there were people like janitors, there were people like cooks, there were people like assistants and things like that who have necessarily, I don't say necessarily, by vocation have put themselves in harm's way. Now that's one part of the argument. They willingly do that. But they willingly do that feeling that they have support from society to do so. Last year, I remember I went on a big long rant about teachers, about them trying to send kids back to school prematurely. They tried to ramroad it then, they tried every dirty trick to make the teachers go back to school, even threatening their licenses, because the politicians wanted them to go back to school. And my only point was, you didn't have data to support the well-being of the children. You didn't have data to support the well-being of the teachers. And, the whole idea of kids, if they get COVID, they recover quickly. I'm not a fool, brothers and sisters. None of us are fools. If a child recovers from COVID, this particular pandemic, it doesn't mean that the child does not have after effects. We don't know. It could affect a child after puberty, going into puberty. We don't know. Just now they're beginning to pull out all kind of data about people who get COVID. You recover, but they're finding out what? People are, with COVID, are being taking x-rays, and it's finding that they have immense scarring on their lungs. Hear me now. Immense scarring on their lungs, which leads to things like pneumonia, which leads to things like respiratory issues. And we're still saying, hey, get out there, don't wear your mask. Now, I don't want to get into that argument, but I'm going to say something right now. And I hope it makes sense. Here we go. It's the idea that American exceptionalism has found its way into our healthcare system. Let me say it again. American exceptionalism has made its way into our healthcare system. You see, American exceptionalism throughout the world is we can do whatever we want to. We're America. Whatever you're going through, it doesn't matter. We're right, wrong, everything in between. We're America. That's our license to do what we want to do. Now, American exceptionalism has moved its way into healthcare, whereby people are beginning to pick and choose who lives, who dies, who heals, who's sick, who gets vaccinations, who don't get vaccinations. One of the things I was really, really happy about the whole vaccination thing, until you peel the covers back, was the fact that the first people who were going to get vaccinations were, wisely, frontline workers. But here's the thing. Even they weren't covered because we found out there weren't enough vaccinations to go around. We have an administration prior to Biden who that didn't have a distribution strategy for how people were supposed to get medication. That's why you have a lot of the mess that's going on now. But here's my other thing. I'm saying protect our frontline workers beyond vaccination because there's been a slow boiling revolt against the people who actually serve the community in a healthcare capacity. I was reading on CNN about doctors, brothers and sisters, doctors and nurses that are being reviled by the people that they're trying to save. Health inspectors, chief of healthcare, now being threatened. They require security. Our own Dr. Antonio Fauci has to get what? Round-the-clock security because he differed by what the powers that be said. When they said it was this, he said, no, this is the data. When they said it was this, he was like, no, this is the problem. And what happened, brothers and sisters, is through that process, animosity arose. And it's that same level of denial that led to people saying, I don't want to wear a mask. It led to people saying, stop the steal. They stole the election. It led to people actually storming the Capitol. And that level of denial is dangerous. Dangerous. Let me tell you why it's dangerous, brothers and sisters. Because it leaves, outside of it leaving no space for any kind of reason, it has now become a healthcare issue. Hear me carefully. It's become a healthcare issue, whereby if I receive something in the positive, you must receive it in the negative. If I'm good, you must be bad. If I'm happy, you must be miserable. Let me give you a prime example. In the healthcare conversation, it is, I'm sick, I heal. If you're sick, you're healed. It's now become an argument, for lack of a better word. Give a shout out to Miss Eleanor. Happy birthday again. All right. But it's now become an issue now with this divide. You can call it QAnon. You can call it Trump supporters. You can call it a whole lot of things. You can call it white supremacists, whatever. But it's now become a problem with healthcare, which means if I get the vaccination, literally, I don't want you to have the vaccination. If I'm good and I heal, I don't want you to heal because it goes against the whole idea of what this pandemic is. If I'm healthy, you must be sick. And that solidifies basically what I think is my healthy way. It's literally criminal, brothers and sisters. It's literally criminal. The fact that I have to come on the show and talk about the fact that our healthcare workers need protection, like legal protection, like physical protection, like security surrounding them, is a very scary thing. And I will extend it to the teachers, because the teachers quietly were under fire for quite a number of months. You know, now that we've gotten to this space, if you will, it's a little bit quiet because Biden's in office, but it doesn't change the argument. Look at the conflict. Got Sister Sultana all the way from New Jersey. How you doing, sister? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. She said racism in medicine. I say it too. You know, all the conversation about black folk and Latinos, and let me just say this, Latinos are dying at a higher rate than African Americans. Let's just throw that out there right now. They're dying at a higher rate than African Americans. But my point is, You hear all this talk and consternation in the black community and the people of color community about the vaccination. Should you take it? Should you not take it? And we're arguing and we're having debate, and I need to know this. I need to know, oh, somebody took the vaccination and died. And oh my, it's not the first time somebody took a vaccination and died, brothers and sisters. That's a reality. As my father said, ain't nobody going to get out of here alive. But the person that died is part of a large sample of people who died. And that's the reality of having a trial. All these medicines haven't been proven. They were trial medicines, and they were expedited because we had nothing in the fray to battle coronavirus. So don't be surprised. But my thing is interesting here. We talk about people having problems getting access to the vaccine. There's not enough dosages. And you know who gets their dosages with absolutely no problem? And they get the shot in the arm with no problem? People in the rural areas. Rural. R-U-R-A-L. Rural. Now, you know what rural means. Sister Sultana, what does rural mean? You know exactly what I'm talking about. I didn't say urban. I said rural. Also suburban. Not urban, suburban areas are having absolutely no problem. Guess what? Getting vaccinations. Does it seem odd that anytime health disparities is brought up and black people are talking about how we are treated and Latinos are talking about how we are treated, the rest of the world is quiet. The medical profession is quiet. I've seen articles about health disparity on sports magazines like The Undefeated. And people are saying, what? Clearly, there's a problem. But the problem is, even more so, and I own up to Dr. Sherman Jackson saying it's about scholarship, about information. There was a time when scholars would wake up and there was a humility in them that said, when I wake up in the morning, they say, basically, I'm the dumbest person in the world until the world informs me. And he said it was a good practice because it allowed for humility and it also allowed for discovery. Per se, it's not that I'm right and you're wrong. It's I may be right with a possibility that you could be wrong, or you may be wrong. You might be right with a possibility that I may be wrong. Well, it's changed now. It's changed now. And now it's so absolute, brothers and sisters. The medical profession has become extremely absolute. And if you want to know why people are dying at the clips they are, it's because people are holding on to ideas, negative core values, and mores that don't work in the present pandemic. You hear what I'm saying? They don't work in the present pandemic. I just said the old framing for knowledge was what? I might be wrong, or I might be right with a possibility that you could be wrong, and vice versa. Now, in healthcare is, for me to be right, you must be wrong. Let me say it again. For me to be right, you must be wrong. And people don't want to even say they're wrong. For me to be wrong, you must be right. No. For me to be right, you must be wrong. Which explains in a nutshell the move away from science and data. You had people trying to dictate medical policy in the middle of a pandemic. They weren't epidemiologists. They weren't infectious disease specialists. You might as well have had a guy who was a podiatrist or a guy who was an optician, ophthalmologist, because those were the people who were trying to shape health policy. And the problem is you can't yell because that door, that window is closed. You can't get close enough to those levels of power to make a difference. And so we're stuck with bad ideas, bad advice, and of course, bad results. But in healthcare, brothers and sisters, and I will try and frame this appropriately, but in healthcare, it can never be, for me to be healthy, you must be sick. You hear what I'm saying? Because that's the idea. For me to be healthy, you must be sick. For me to be right, you must be wrong. Therein lies the fact that our healthcare workers, particularly our frontline workers, are caught in this conundrum. Because science is not an exact thing. Therein, right there, tells you that there's a problem. I could be right, I could be wrong. Based against the absolute. For me to be right, you must be wrong. And herein is the danger of a QAnon, the danger of a Fox News, the danger of a Trump. It's like being in a gang. It's like being jumped into a gang. It's like saying, for you to be part of the gang, you can't pay attention to any of the reality around you. You can't listen to any kind of logic that may remotely tip the balance of reason that I'm giving you now. You can't have a dentist giving hysterectomies. I don't want to go to that dentist at all. Thank you, though. And if you know that dentist, please put his name out in the thing. But seriously, you have a situation now in medicine, but not the people who are doctors, not the people who are nurses, not our frontline workers, but the people who they serve have now somehow fashioned the argument that for me to be right, you must be wrong. So if I don't want to wear a mask, it's wrong to wear a mask. You're wrong for promoting the idea of wearing a mask for people to have precautions and take precautions against COVID. This gentleman over here says the school is safe. Well, you must be wrong. And to prove that I'm right, I need you to send not only your kids, I need you to send your kids, I need to send teachers to prove me right. And I'm tired of this, brothers and sisters. It's almost like the old tax system. You know, every Republican president, pretty much every Republican president, always wants a tax cut. Okay? Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I don't appreciate a tax cut. Of course I do. That'd be foolish to say that. My problem is if it comes at the behest of people not having or people suffering, and I know that there's suffering going on, then I don't want that tax cut. That's just me. I'll say that. Everybody has their own boat to float here. But here's the thing I am going to say. That same philosophy now has become part of the healthcare system. I say missing teeth. Don't go to the dentist that wears fault. Don't go to the dentist that's missing teeth. There you go. But my point, and I really want to make this, that whole idea is a tax cut mentality. Trump, Bush, Reagan, all of them wanted tax cuts. And the thing that's really, really apparent, and I think we should definitely focus on this, it's not that we don't want a tax cut, brothers and sisters, but we have to know that the benefit of the tax cut comes to us. We're at the far end of the funnel. We're not where the big money is. We're down here at the end, where it trickles out. Per se. Even with the stimulus stuff, you're not going to get when the people who need the stimulus are not going to get the stimulus package. They're going to get a little drip here, some PPP. I've said this before about black businesses, Latino businesses. They said easily when COVID started, almost 40 to 45% of minority businesses were not going to make it. Why is this substantial? Because in the last crisis, when Obama took office in 2008, 70% of minority-owned businesses didn't come back. Why am I saying this? Because you're looking at the same statistics in terms of our frontline workers. And if they're not protected, they're not going to come back. That's nurses, that's doctors, that is nurses' assistants, that is janitors, that is hospital workers, that is paramedics, that is teachers, that is support staff. They're not coming back. We're setting up a lose-lose situation. And the attitude of, for me to be right, you must be wrong, is literally killing people. is literally sending people to their graves unnecessarily. You're creating an environment. Listen to me. You're creating an environment. You know, if I were to fall dead one day, and it's going to happen, and they say it's the cause of death, somebody goes, he had lung cancer. And somebody's going to go, did he smoke? No, preacher didn't smoke. But somebody's going, you know what? For a lot of years, he worked smoky clubs. And to do stand-up, I had to stand on stage and do stand-up in some of the most smoke-filled rooms you could imagine. You could cut it with a knife. It's called secondhand smoke. Well, you have the same thing going on. Secondhand opinions, second backhanded opinions, and it's affecting our frontline workers. I keep coming back to this thing. It's like the tax cut mentality. You know what the tax cut mentality is? And this is why I said this about our schools and our teachers, because they took a tax cut mentality. Most of you know, or maybe you don't. When they do a tax cut, brothers and sisters, they do it immediately. Immediately. They invoke the tax cut right then and there. But when it comes to the aspect of paying for it, the people who invoke the tax cut, who pushed for it, advocated for it, fought, cheat, whatever they did for it, they won't be around. They probably won't be in political office. What I'm trying to say is they won't be there to pay for it. And the cost gets passed on to who? The people. The people that they're supposed to serve and protect. The tax cuts get passed. And when you get the tax cuts, brothers and sisters, the cost is not money. The cost is, wow, the schools aren't up to date. Wow, healthcare isn't up to date. Wow, educational opportunities are not up to date. Wow, why can't I get a raise? Wow, these are the things that you have to talk about. Here you go, sister. You say, yeah. Thank you, Sister Donna. And anyone else who wants to chime in, please chime in. Again, this is Sunday Potluck. You know, I'm not here to preach, pardon the pun, but I'm here to give information. And that idea now of buy now, pay later does not work in healthcare. Buy now, pay later does not work in healthcare. Buy now, pay later does not work in economic systems because you can't guarantee that you're going to have the money to pay later. That's like the whole credit card system. That's the debt system. The debt system is, oh, you don't have it now? I'm going to give you the money, you'll pay later. But everybody knows what it is with credit. If you borrow $500, you're not returning $500. You borrow $500, you're going to return $500 and you're going to pay interest on it. It's the same thing that we're doing with healthcare right now. And the idea that there are Facebook parties or Facebook groups that literally malign our healthcare workers, who literally threaten our healthcare workers, who put it on these WhatsApp chats. We should go to their house. We should post it. These are healthcare workers. And they're being treated as enemy combatants for doing their job. You know, when I was a teacher, one of the hardest things about teaching is learning in some regards. I'm not going to say it at every school, but particularly in inner city schools. You're going to learn that some of the people that you share that school with, the teachers, they don't have the best interests of the kids at heart. Let me say that. They don't have the compassion for the kids. It's a job for them, until they can go somewhere else. And to hear them talk about it in the teacher lounge as a first-year teacher, I'd never bring my child to this school, and I made a mistake. Or maybe I didn't. I said, well, maybe you need to go to another school. Maybe we don't need your child here. That's a rookie mistake as a teacher, especially when you teach severely emotionally disturbed kids. But what I learned clearly was there was a fight to be had for the kids, and there was a fight to be had against the teachers that thought that way. because that mindset was toxic. How you doing, Sister Noor? Let me see. Can Tucker Food System be of help? Can you explain Tucker Food? I think I missed. I might have missed something in it, Sister Noor. Please, can you reframe that question for me, if you don't mind? But one thing we didn't disparage, brothers and sisters, is and I give this to all the parents I dealt with. I didn't need protection from the parents. Frontline workers don't need protection. They need support. Because it's hard to go in there and do that job. The burnout is high. The risks are high. And the pay is marginal. You know, this is not the first, but this is one of the rare times where you looked at a pandemic that took out doctors. There are doctors who showed up every day knowing they were dealing with a pandemic and knowing that the chances of infection were extremely high, and they showed up anyway. You know, they were literally like, how can I help? But they risk themselves. They risk their families. The nurses risk themselves. They risk their families. Teachers that are trying to teach today not only risk catching COVID, but they risk taking it home to their families. And while we should be having arguments for them to increase their pay, get $100, $200 an hour, we have people who are essentially just going, whatever. We have people essentially going, whatever. And they sold out on the system. They've sold out on the system. I'm not going to hard point it, brothers and sisters, but like I said, it seems weird to me that all the arguments about vaccinations and should we take it, should we not take it, it happens in communities of color. But I could probably take our trip out into the rural areas, and you'll see people getting vaccines in a very orderly and uniform fashion. Less the conversation. So let's start thinking about that a little bit more. Let's start. Okay, I'm gonna take that up. I'll look that up. Thank you, Sister Nur. Hey man, is on here? What's going on, brother? Let's see. Islamic practice, member pool insurance. Okay, Islamic practice. Okay, all right. Thank you. But as I wrap, I really think it's important that we begin to have, like I said, our own conversations. I said this when Biden took office, that we should not get laxed and we should not feel safe or protected because it's still a system. You still have to work through systems. And I've always been deathly afraid of when politics mix with healthcare. People get lost in the fray. So, for that, I would just hope everybody, to keep our frontline workers in prayer. You got Dr. Wazir, Imam Wazir on here. He knows exactly what I'm talking about. The importance of, healthcare is a community trust. You know what I mean? Healthcare is a community trust. Healthcare for black people is, that you have an Obamacare and, it wasn't a gimme. Let's just say that right now. Let's just say it's not. It wasn't a gimme. And anything with people of color, particularly African Americans, anything good in this country, we had to fight for it. We've had to legally tussle for it. We had to legally argue for it. You damn near got to kill somebody legally to get there. You got to learn the laws. You got to learn the language. And that process, while we've excelled at doing it, it's still so unnecessary. When I could walk across the street or drive 40 miles from here and see where there are other people who didn't have to go through that. Somehow, it just worked out for them. Wink, wink. So as a close, brothers and sisters, I don't really want to make it too big an issue, but I don't want to ignore the obvious. You know, again, healthcare, like scholarship, should not be absolute. For me to be, like I said, brothers and sisters, the idea is uh, I'm right with a possibility of you being wrong, or you're right with me, a possibility of me being wrong. You're right with a possibility of me being wrong. That's normal. That makes sense. But not this, for me to be right, you must be wrong. And that's where we are right now. Politicians, our judges have slowly meandered into this space, and it's not about to move. It's not about to move. What you say this, sister? Preaching and teaching is their method of keeping us behind. Well, what's that word? What's that quote from Imam Wafdi Muhammad? If you don't like the way people treat you, change the way you think. They say, if they can't treat you right, they don't treat you right, they can't teach you right. Enough said. Listen, that's my show today, everybody. Hope everybody's chilled out, relaxed. We'll be back tomorrow, inshallah. I appreciate you. This is Preacher Moss, the ShOUT Show, Sunday Potluck. Remember, don't just protect our frontline workers, let's pray for them too. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hey everybody, this is your brother Preacher Moss. Listen, I hope that you enjoyed your ShOUT Show experience. We'll be back with the next show, the next ShOUT Show. A simple ask before you go, please help your brother out. Click that subscribe button, click that notify button, and I'll see you again on this side of the microphone. You probably wonder what that smell is. That's me. I smell good. And the reason I smell good is because I use oils from Tarif Attar. So I'm not saying you can't smell good. I'm not even saying you stink. I'm saying you have the opportunity to smell exquisite. Check out tarifattar.com for some of the best oils and scents in town.